Hi, I'm with Loretta Moreno, Resource Planner for Cannabis Licensing for Santa Cruz County, and Robin Bolster-Grant, Cannabis Licensing Manager for Santa Cruz County. How are you guys doing today?
Wow, great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'd like to start on with a couple simple questions, then go on to some more in-depth, and then finally move on to some live stream video audience questions. So how'd you guys get your position in this department, and is cannabis a passion for you?
Well, I started back in January, not quite a year ago, in this department, but I've been working for over 13 years in environmental compliance and land use planning, both locally and internationally, working with the farming sector. So I've worked with cattle ranchers, soybean producers, all in supply chain management, so trying to reduce the impacts of the industry on the environment. So this was just a natural fit to step into this role. I've always thought legalization was important to clean up the environment and tax the industry and make it safe. So pretty supportive of this process, and that's where I come into it.
And I have been the manager for a little over a month, so still feeling my way through and learning as I go. I spent 16 years in the planning department here in the county. And during that time was a project planner for some of the dispensaries that came in, and later did some code compliance that touched on some of the problems that we've seen over the past several years with unregulated cannabis growing. And so it was natural for me as well. My background is also environmental policy and planning. And you know, it's an industry we know is going to change a lot of things about how Santa Cruz looks and operates, and I think it's important for those of us who care about the environment, care about the community, that we take hold of that process and help folks do things the right way, come out of the shadows. But I'm a policy person, so getting involved in something new like this is pretty exciting for me.
Awesome. So do you feel that your department is on track for the coming year?
I would say we are. Yeah, we're trying to cross our T's and dot our I's to make sure our environmental impact report covers all the bases to prevent any problems going forward. And I think compared to other counties, we're pretty much on track, on target.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we've done a lot of groundwork, and certainly Loretta's been a big part of that in terms of the licensing office. Cannabis obviously has a long history here in Santa Cruz, so this is not something new for us. Bringing it into a regulated environment is new, but understanding how the industry operates and some of the impacts that we've seen in our hills and other parts of the county, that we're familiar with, and I think that helps us be better positioned than some other jurisdictions that are still trying to understand what the industry even looks like.
Which always makes me laugh because I wonder why Los Angeles has been dragging their feet with everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and on track, January 1st, we do have dispensaries licensed in the county, but manufacturing and cultivation, the rules won't land on January 1st. We'll still have a process ahead before the board approves a final ordinance, but we're expecting some time in the winter this year.
Okay. So what has been your biggest obstacle in this process?
Biggest obstacle? I think, what's really difficult is the cannabis industry is ready to go. They're really motivated. They want to make their investments and move forward with their businesses in an open way, pay their taxes, etc. They're very motivated. But I think, the obstacle is just the process that, is necessary and important. I think it's more from their perspective, the obstacle. For us, it's a necessary part of, setting up a whole program to regulate. But the timing is difficult. So I think we feel the urgency the industry, has, but at the same time, we have to honor the public process, the legal, environmental review we must do. So I wouldn't call it an obstacle exactly, but it's definitely, we realize the timing is of the essence, and we're trying to catch up to be ready to go. But yeah. Yeah,
it's a challenge, I think, for the industry, and then it becomes a challenge for us in terms of guiding folks. We want to be able to help people position themselves and their businesses for when the regulations come online, but without giving them too much information that may or may not serve them down the line. So if somebody is looking at purchasing or renting a property to do some aspect of business, they're looking to us to give them guidance, and we're not there yet. So there's a bit of a sort of, hurry up and wait, and people want to make business decisions and understand, have some kind of sense of certainty about what their business is going to look like, and we don't have all the pieces yet to be able to give that to them. So we can only help them, to a limited extent until we have regulations that are finalized.
So, coming from an environmental standpoint, what drove the decision to pull a full environmental impact assessment? I know that some counties, they only did a very minimal one, but from what I'm aware of, it was a full-fledged assessment.
I mean, the county, we have a large area we're talking about. It has, it's a significant region to cover with a lot of considerations and public concerns. And I think the only process that we could possibly consider is an EIR, because other counties that didn't choose to, that's fine, that was their decision, and I'm sure that's works for them. But I think our county is more, complex, and while small, relatively small compared to the rest of the state, we have a lot of natural resources we need to consider, and there's a lot of activities the cannabis industry wants to do. So this is our way of making sure we cover our bases and get it right the first time.
Yeah, Santa Cruz County has a long storied history of environmental activism, going back to the 70s. Some of the environmental regulations on the books concerning sensitive habitat protection, riparian protection, having to do with clearing, grading. A lot of those were groundbreaking when they were first imposed back in the 70s, and I think that it's only natural for a community that places such a high premium on protecting resources that we would go to the extreme in making sure that every single aspect of the industry and the activities to come are evaluated in terms of what it means for our environment. And I think if we were to do anything less, we wouldn't have achieved a level of trust with our citizens out there. They expect us to go to these extremes, to be fully transparent about what this means for the environment. So to me, there was never really any doubt about how far we would go with this.
And the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, the acronym, mandates it. I mean, at a certain level of activity, you're no longer exempt from the process and have to do a full review. So, yeah.
Have you guys received an answer yet with the impact report?
It's out for public review right now, actually, until the end of October. The public can comment on the attributes of the analysis and make any comments they wish. And then once the public process closes, it'll go, there'll be a review internally to address all questions and actually explicitly respond to all comments. And then it'll go before the Planning Commission and then the board before any final version is adopted. So there's a bit of a road ahead for this. Once the public comment period ends at the end of the month, there's still more public process to come.
I want to throw a quick question out to you guys. Since you guys are huge on the environment and this county is very well known for it, with pesticides, we do know that with California in general, they want to usurp Oregon with the highest standard when it comes to pesticides at I think about 65. How do you feel that it's going to affect possibly the cultivation of other plants with tomatoes, grapes, and actual agricultural products? Do you think that is your hope to transfer that over so we have healthier food coming out into the environment?
Yeah, well, we have an ag commissioner's office that might have something to say about that piece, but I think there's very limited role we can play in what pesticides are or not used on crops. Cannabis currently at the federal level is not prescribed. There's no pesticide prescribed for cannabis at this time, whether it's rodenticides or otherwise. So actually no pesticide or rodenticide, et cetera, are legal on cannabis, but the state will make a determination. It wouldn't come from the county. Yeah. We actually have no permission to decide on pesticides.
Right. Mm-hmm. I was more so pushing towards is this more of a cool yes, we're putting a higher standard on it, maybe this will transfer over.
Permeate in the market. I think there's already quite a push.
There's a big push to have something akin to organic, although you can't, I guess, use the
USDA.
word technically.
Right.
That's a federal standard and a federal term. But most of the growers that I talk to day in, day out stress the different methods for integrated pest management, all kinds of pest management practices to keep it clean and as much as possible pesticide free. And as close to organic. And I think that that's going to be part of the marketing, frankly, for a lot of folks here in Santa Cruz, that will be how they differentiate themselves from the folks that are, going to grow large scale, maybe in the Central Valley or other parts of California. Our farmers have a bit of a task to carve out their own market, and I'm sure that organic or something akin to that will be part of their branding for sure.
Yeah, I've seen we've seen some farms, and they're bar none some of the best farms that we've seen out here when it comes to clean, organic, friendly. So it's wonderful. So that's so great to see.
It is.
So with licensing applications, when do you expect to launch the process for that?
Well, that depends on how this environmental impact report process rolls through. Once we have received all the comments, I should back up and say that we have issued licenses for 12 dispensaries in the county, so that part is done for now. With respect to cultivation and manufacturing, that's tied together with the environmental impact report. So once the decision makers have received all the comments and understand what the implications from the report are, then they're going to be looking at finalizing the regulations, adopting the ordinances, and it's not until they land on what those final regs will be that we will begin issuing licenses for cultivation.
What has been the community's response to the county's decision to go completely legal?
By and large, I think it's been hugely supportive. I don't know what the numbers were for Prop 64. I imagine that we were,
It wasn't a slim margin. It was definitely
70s, 80s. It was very high, very high. There's definitely been support. First for medical, and then when it was opened up to recreational, I think the vast majority of our community is supportive of that.
Yeah,
done the right way.
Yeah, and they're looking out for children, youth, protection of children and youth, and the environment. That's the biggest issue, is neighborhood compatibility, that the environment is not trash. And I think legalization will bring what they're looking for. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to capture.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of support.
How many licenses per type is the community planning on giving out?
For manufacturing, we haven't established a limit. Dispensaries, it's already been determined until further notice by the board. They've settled on 12 licensees that are running right now. But so dispensaries, people trying to come to the county and open up a new dispensary may have difficulty because that's capped. But for cultivation, we have approximately 740 or so, along those lines, registrants. So no one holding a license yet, but they're registered. And then they're hopefuls for a license. We don't anticipate another registration process in the near future unless the board directs that. So for now, that's the number we're dealing with, and we'll see how the manufacturing comes out. The board hasn't really weighed in on manufacturing yet. Right. So the rules were presented with the environmental impact report for manufacturing, and the board may determine they want to cap it, or they may have a registration process, but we have no information on that yet for that piece.
So for the commercial cannabis businesses in your county, has there been any confusion with having state and local licenses to be legal inside your county?
Yeah, I would say you get your mix. I mean, most people who are really serious, they're aware.
Right.
And some people who are serious, but maybe they've been up in the hills for a while and don't use the internet, they may not really understand that there is a difference. But we're really working hard in our department to disseminate that through workshops we've been holding and reminding people you need your state license too. It's not just us. So local and state, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there may be less confusion, more concern about how the timelines will operate. once the first of the year rolls around and the state is open for business with respect to temporary licenses, I think there's maybe a little bit of concern that we're not going to be on board yet, and what the implications are for those businesses. Hopefully, most folks have gotten enough information to understand that the state, and you may be aware of this, the state is also aware that everybody is not ready on a local level, and they're not in a hurry to penalize folks. So the issuance of temporary licenses, I think, shouldn't be hugely problematic for most folks that are in compliance or trying to be in compliance with all the regs. But I found that our local cannabis industry folks here are by and large very, very well educated. They teach me all the time about what the different requirements are and the layers of regulation. So I think we have a pretty sophisticated core group, and some of the other folks are coming on board slowly.
So on that point, I'm sure there won't be as much of an issue out here since you're giving more licenses than most, but there has been talk about somewhere between 80 and 90% of businesses right now that are still going to stay underground. So what is your response to that?
You do so at your own risk. I mean, my background is enforcement. I'm not really comfortable being a cop all the time, but at the same time, we have basically an understanding, if not a contract, with the folks that are doing this the right way and intend to do this the right way. And there's no way that I can look at them and say, we're putting you through all of the paces and regulations that we have. You're going through the state, you're going to be taxed, you're going through all this, but never mind those folks across the street that aren't doing it. That's not fair. And if you're not part of the regulated environment, you're probably not taking care of the environment and not doing your business in the way that we want you to. So we will go after folks, and enforcement, unfortunately, is going to be a significant part of what we do to make sure that we protect and honor the folks that are doing it the right way. So we will find as many folks as we can and bring them into compliance, or they won't be doing business here in Santa Cruz.
Okay. So with on-site consumption, what has been the department's stance on on-site consumption or even events?
Yeah, well, the only entities that are able to distribute cannabis products are the licensed dispensaries in the county. So unless you're a licensed dispensary in our county, you can't distribute food, any food products or edibles, whatever, to the public here in Santa Cruz. So given that, there are people talking about bed and breakfasts and other concepts like that, and I think, if they were to propose something at some point, we could see how that would fit into existing laws and look at it. But it would probably have to go through the dispensary if you're administering products. But other than that, there's no on-site provisions that we've developed yet. I think maybe it's too early.
Right.
We're going to try to get the basic rules on the books.
For any events like Chalice or larger scale like fairground type of events, are those things that you're looking into allowing, or is that something that you guys are still waiting to have an answer for?
We're not there yet.
Right.
We're not there. I know that the questions are out there and the interest is there for sure. But even though we're ahead of a lot of jurisdictions, we want to take it nice and slow. So we need to deal with where you can grow, where you can manufacture, make sure that we have a handle on those things, and then we'll get into some other sort of offshoots of this industry, because there will be many. So I have faith that we'll get there, but we're not there today.
Okay. So how closely has the department been working with the Bureau of Cannabis Control?
I'd say we've been in touch. We keep our eye on things that may, affect us on the ground here. We're focused on the local land use planning and environmental compliance piece. So the state level is kind of, we are a bit separate, but we are in touch when it comes to things like temporary licensing and possible implications on the industry, keeping up to date on whatever could come into, affect our industry here in the county. But at the moment, I think we're just focused on getting our rules set the board adopting final rules. That's our biggest focus.
Agreed.
And with the Bureau of Cannabis Control, how do you feel how their guidelines are going as they're putting it forward? Obviously, we have finalized regulations coming in November, but with that, do you feel that it's on the right track, or do you think you have any revisions that you would like to put forward with that?
I wouldn't criticize them. I think they're doing the best they can, and probably like any big program, you're not going to have everything perfect at the beginning. You're going to see the mistakes or problems, and I have confidence that they're aware from other states and lessons learned there about a lot of pitfalls, and but nothing is going to be perfect right out the gate.
Of course.
So I think we're confident in the state, and we're going to work as a team when it comes to time. And
Yep.
So with the Bureau of Cannabis Control and their anticipated release in November, are there any pending policies right now in anticipation of that?
Not specific to the release of the regulation. I think, as we talked about before, we are trying to make sure we do everything that we can to get out of the way for folks that are going to be seeking temporary licenses at the first of the year. And the regulations that come out from the various state agencies in November may help to clarify that, may not. But we're just trying to, like I said, kind of get out of the way, make sure we're not the obstacles for folks that legitimately should qualify for temporary licenses.
How do you think legalization will impact the economy of the Santa Cruz County?
Well, I think it's looking quite favorable. We didn't do an economic analysis as part of our environmental impact report, but the projections of jobs look very positive. I think there's a lot of components to the industry beyond the immediate handling of cannabis products, the support industries that are going to be quite robust. So we're looking at, I think, a lot of job potential just overall in the county, which I think would be good for the county.
Absolutely. The tax money certainly will help. I think that the recreational use, adult use specifically, will really kind of ramp up the activity. We've already seen pretty robust economic activity on the part of our dispensaries. They've done very well and brought in a lot of tax money, and we expect that to continue. And as Loretta said, the projections for job creation as a part of the industry are pretty jaw-dropping. I don't know how reliable they are, but we know that we're going to see a big uptick, and that's a good thing.
So on that, there are a lot of counties right now, and we talked about this a little bit before the interview, that there are some counties that are very wary of making approvals, or they just want to strictly ban it. They don't want to, they don't want any part of it, any part of legalization, and that their fear is that there's going to be more, there's going to be more trafficking out there. There's going to be, more issues, more crime. What's some advice that you would like to give some of these counties that would possibly help them or change their mind?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that there's a lot of opportunity in legalization. Yes, there could be downsides. We can recognize that. But I think that the opportunity to control the market, to clean up an industry that, I think there are a lot of good actors out there, but I think there's a lot of folks that haven't paid attention to environmental protection of our streams, endangered species, cutting down trees without permission, etc. That kind of thing will be better controlled with a regulated market. You can't really do that if you just keep it in the black where they've been for decades. So this is an opportunity to tax the industry and use it for public facilities and schools and education, etc., and environmental cleanup. I think it's just a really good opportunity to get access to that, and I would rather see it in the light than in the black where it's been and it's not worked out.
Right, they need to recognize that the industry exists, whether or not they are electing to regulate it, and the upside of bringing folks into a regulated environment is huge with respect to all of the values that we've been talking about, environmental, the neighborhoods, everything else. It's like folks that don't want to see development and just sort of, hold it at bay. Well, it's going to happen, right? It's a matter of allowing it and regulating it and being able to control it instead of just pretending that it doesn't exist. So we have a lot to share about our experience so far. So any other jurisdictions that want advice on how to proceed, we're available to counsel them.
Great. So I know you guys touched on this before. but what has been your public outreach for the community to drive education, to talk about the policies and everything that's going down the pipeline?
Yeah, Loretta has been spearheading a number of different workshops and outreach activities over the past 6 months or more.
Yeah, we started out with some departmental workshops where we invited cannabis industry in to listen to some of the departments that would regulate them going forward. So getting them kind of accustomed to the departments like Ag Commissioner's Office for pesticide permits, or anyway, handling of cannabis crops and scales, weights and measures, things that they don't normally have to deal with. You do now that it's a agricultural crop. Also environmental health and hazardous materials. We had a workshop training on that and the types of things the industry needs to be documenting and how they need to store their chemicals, if applicable. So we did that, but now more recently we had a state workshop where anyone's invited to come to our website and check it out, but we had a workshop where state agencies came. We hosted them at our county so they could kind of talk to the industry about the state requirements that they're going to have to meet. So while they need local licenses, they need a state license, and these are the departments they're going to have to confront, which would not confront, but get licensed, deal with, work with. And so they need to, the State Water Board, the Regional Water Quality Control Board came, Fish and Wildlife came, and CAL FIRE, and they all talked to them about the rules that will apply going forward. So we really try to kind of wade people into the water with us, get them comfortable with the faces of the people who will give them licenses. And we also started a Facebook page to kind of keep, for those that aren't into Facebook, you can still look at it to get updates. You don't have to be on Facebook, but just to see the more recent updates that we have, any kind of upcoming hearings that we want to advertise, or updates on the environmental impact report, and how we had not trainings, but kind of a workshop on the environmental impact report and how to read it, how to interpret it. It's a big document. I don't know where it's a huge document, so 600 pages. So we wanted to,
for anybody that wants to see this thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of material there. So we walked people through content and how to comment on the report. So we're doing our best because we want people to participate. We want the industry to weigh in before the rules are final.
Right. I think it's important also to mention that that we have a real open door policy. People come up to the 5th floor here in the county building every single day without appointments, walking in saying, who can I talk to about cannabis? I have this idea, or I've registered, what are the next steps? Every day we have a number of folks coming in or calling, and that's a big part of our job, is to just be available to answer questions and walk people through the process.
Cool. So, what was that website? So for people that need to check out the videos.
So our website, I can't think of like the www.
Yeah.
But it's, if you just Google Santa Cruz County Cannabis Licensing, you will get to our page.
It'll be the first.
And on Facebook too, if you just type that in, you'll find us, and then people can read about the latest updates if they want to keep it.
And links to the videos for most of the outreach that we've done. We've got the actual links there on the website and the Facebook page.
So. Yeah.
Cool. And the best way to contact you guys, aside from walking in the door?
Yeah, our website again might be a good way to reach us. Cannabis Licensing Santa Cruz County, and then we have a contact us page with all our names and numbers and email. But yeah, you can just call the county anytime, and one of us will answer and get back to you.
Great. And I love that you guys put a forward presence with that. You can talk right to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, we are always here.
Well, I love it. Well,
normal business hours anyway.
Someone calling you.
Yeah, if you come in,
not awake.
try to come in on Saturday. That's not going to happen.